Standard exercise is a lie. We're told that running, swimming, or lifting weights is the gold standard for longevity, but the numbers tell a completely different story. One specific activity slashes your dementia risk by 76%. Not 10%, not 20, 76. Most people have never heard that figure, and the ones who have usually dismiss it as a fluke. That is a massive clinical error. I am going to break down exactly why this works, from the high-level neuroscience down to the granular biochemistry. By the time this session is over, you will understand the mechanics of your brain and your joints better than the primary care doctor who spent 8 minutes with you last year. I'll be blunt. The traditional healthcare system doesn't want you hearing this. It's a system designed to profit from your illness, not your recovery. A patient who is well is a customer lost. If you are tired of the managed decline and want the actual blueprints to biological optimization, subscribe to this channel right now and like this video. We are building a community that values truth over corporate profit. Let's get into it. The activity I'm talking about is dancing. Before you roll your eyes and click away because it sounds too simple, give me 60 seconds. I'm going to explain this as a physician sitting across from you in a private exam room, not as some lifestyle coach. I've been in the trenches of clinical practice for 15 years. Every day I see patients on 5 different medications for conditions that stem from one single ignored problem. Their bodies have stopped doing anything new. They drive the same path to the same job. They sit in the same ergonomic chair. They walk the same 3 miles on a treadmill. Their brains are running on a dead-end autopilot, replaying the same motor patterns they mastered decades ago. No novelty, no complexity, no new signals. In my clinic, I call this motor monotony. It is the silent killer of your nervous system. When you repeat the same motions every day, your neural pathways stop being reinforced. They become ghost towns. Here is the fundamental neuroscience the industry keeps under wraps. Your brain is not a static warehouse. It is living, breathing tissue. It is either growing or it is atrophying. There is no middle ground. If you feed it novelty and complexity, it builds new connections. If you let it run on a loop for years, those connections thin out, weaken, and eventually fail. Now, let's look at the data the establishment tries to bury. A landmark study cited by Harvard Medical School examined how different cognitive and physical activities impacted dementia risk. Reading reduced the risk by 35%. Doing crossword puzzles reduced it by 47%. But here is the shocker. Walking, swimming, and cycling had almost no measurable effect on cognitive outcomes. 0. That caught a lot of doctors off guard, but if you understand the mechanism, it makes perfect sense. Walking on a treadmill doesn't require your brain to learn anything. Your legs move, but your mind is essentially idling in the parking lot. It is the cognitive load that dictates your brain's survival, the real-time adaptation and coordination. Dancing, however, reduced dementia risk by 76%. That is double the benefit of crossword puzzles. This isn't a small anecdotal study. These are findings that should be at the center of every conversation for anyone over 50. In 2026, researchers at Kyoto University confirmed something even more critical for clinical practice. They found that dancing is a powerhouse for people already experiencing memory slippage. those who can't retrieve names or keep losing track of daily tasks, even when their formal tests still look normal. We call this subjective cognitive decline. It's the transitional danger zone between healthy aging and early-stage dementia. This is the exact window where intervention actually works before the damage becomes permanent. During this period, dancing functions as a genuine biological shield. The disease hasn't seized control yet. You can still slow it down or even stop it in its tracks. Let me tell you about a patient. We'll call her Carol. At 63, she was a retired educator, sharp as a tack, and a devotee of the Sunday crossword. But for 18 months, the cracks were showing. She was losing student names she'd known for a decade, misplacing her keys, and drifting out of conversations. Her corporate medical tests? Flawless. Her doctor told her everything was fine. I told her the truth. She was in the transitional zone, and her brain was starving for a new signal. 6 months later, the fog had vanished. She didn't buy a subscription to a brain training app or start a new pill regimen. She joined a beginner salsa class twice a week. That's it. No expensive intervention, just movement. Why? Because at a neurological level, dancing is a high-intensity data processing event that the establishment doesn't have a pill for. When you learn a new dance, 2 critical structures are forced into overdrive. First, the basal ganglia, the deep clusters responsible for recording movement sequences. This is where your motor memory lives. Second, the cerebellum at the back of your skull, which governs accuracy and coordination. In most sedentary adults, the cerebellum is essentially deconditioned. It's why people become stiff, choppy, and start misjudging their steps. But here is where the secret lies. While most exercises only tickle 1 or 2 brain zones, dancing creates a neurological riot. 6 distinct regions fire simultaneously. The kinesthetic zone, mapping your body in space. The auditory zone, decoding rhythm and musical phrasing. The limbic system, processing the emotional and social energy. The prefrontal cortex, acting as the executive planner for the next move. No other activity on the planet, not chess, not yoga, not your complex professional job, demands this much parallel processing. Dancing is the most cognitively demanding physical task a human being can perform, and the science is finally catching up to that fact. There is also a hidden principle here: smoothness. The industry wants you to think more intense means faster or heavier. They're wrong. The harder you work to make a movement fluid and controlled, the harder your cerebellum has to compute. Speed is often just momentum masking a lack of control. True training happens in the pursuit of that continuous, seaweed-like quality of motion. Recent data from 2026 even confirms the cerebellum isn't just for moving, it's for thinking. It regulates your cognitive speed, your ability to switch focus, and your emotional stability. Every slow, deliberate, smooth step you take on a dance floor is a direct investment in the sharpness of your mind. It's the ultimate biological bypass. Now, let's talk about what is happening below your chin. Most people walk into a doctor's office with a spine that feels like a rusted iron bar. They are spending thousands on maintenance, cortisone shots, massage, expensive adjustments. that provide maybe 48 hours of relief without ever touching the actual cause. That cause is simple. Your spine has stopped moving. The industry treats your vertebrae like a stack of static bricks, but the biology is much more interesting. Your intervertebral discs, those cartilage pads that act as your shock absorbers, have zero blood supply of their own. None. They can't eat unless you move. They survive entirely through a process called diffusion. Think of them like a sponge. When you move, you compress the disc and push old metabolic waste out. When the pressure releases, it draws fresh, nutrient-rich fluid back in. If you move your spine regularly, your discs stay hydrated and resilient. But if you sit in a chair for 8 hours a day, those discs slowly dehydrate. They stiffen, they thin out, and eventually they fail. That is how herniations begin. It isn't too much movement that kills your back. It's the lack of it. I want you to visualize a specific movement, a full body wave. It starts at the top of your neck and rolls all the way down to your tailbone, letting every segment of your spine flex and extend like seaweed in a current. This isn't just an expressive dance move. It is a clinical intervention. No single physical therapy drill targets the cervical, thoracic, and lumbar regions simultaneously in one fluid pattern. Not one. But dancing does it naturally. A few minutes of that wave-like motion loosens the ligaments and releases the paraspinal tension that builds up from hours of staring at a screen. But it goes deeper than muscle. Running parallel to your spine are the sympathetic nerve trunks, the conductive highways of your autonomic nervous system. This is the system that keeps your heart beating and your digestion moving without your permission. When your spine is locked and immobile for years, the electrical signal transmission through those chains gets sluggish. This explains something I see constantly. Patients with chronic back pain who also suffer from irritable bowel syndrome or irregular heart rhythms. The spine isn't just a structural pillar. It is a communication hub. Restoring that mobility isn't just about feeling loose. It's about restoring the conductivity of your entire nervous system. The establishment sees a back problem. I see a system-wide communication failure that can be fixed with rhythm. Now let's talk about what is happening below your chin. Most people walk into a doctor's office with a spine that feels like a rusted iron bar. They are spending thousands on maintenance, cortisone shots, massage, expensive adjustments that provide maybe 48 hours of relief without ever touching the actual cause. That cause is simple. Your spine has stopped moving. The industry treats your vertebra like a stack of static bricks, but the biology is much more interesting. Your intervertebral discs, those cartilage pads that act as your shock absorbers, have zero blood supply of their own. None. They can't eat unless you move. They survive entirely through a process called diffusion. Think of them like a sponge. When you move, you compress the disc and push old metabolic waste out. When the pressure releases, it draws fresh, nutrient-rich fluid back in. If you move your spine regularly, your discs stay hydrated and resilient. But if you sit in a chair for 8 hours a day, those discs slowly dehydrate. They stiffen, they thin out, and eventually they fail. That is how herniations begin. It isn't too much movement that kills your back. It's the lack of it. I want you to visualize a specific movement, a full body wave. It starts at the top of your neck and rolls all the way down to your tailbone, letting every segment of your spine flex and extend like seaweed in a current. This isn't just an expressive dance move, it is a clinical intervention. No single physical therapy drill targets the cervical, thoracic, and lumbar regions simultaneously in one fluid pattern. Not one. But dancing does it naturally. A few minutes of that wave-like motion loosens the ligaments and releases the paraspinal tension that builds up from hours of staring at a screen. But it goes deeper than muscle. Running parallel to your spine are the sympathetic nerve trunks, the conductive highways of your autonomic nervous system. This is the system that keeps your heart beating and your digestion moving without your permission. When your spine is locked and immobile for years, the electrical signal transmission through those chains gets sluggish. This explains something I see constantly. Patients with chronic back pain who also suffer from irritable bowel syndrome or irregular heart rhythms. The spine isn't just a structural pillar, it is a communication hub. Restoring that mobility isn't just about feeling loose, it's about restoring the conductivity of your entire nervous system. The establishment sees a back problem. I see a system-wide communication failure that can be fixed with rhythm. Let's talk about your joints, because the medical industry has been feeding you a destructive myth for decades. They tell you that movement wears your joints out, as if you're a set of tires with a fixed mileage. That is a total lie. Inactivity and incorrect, rigid movement are what actually destroy your joints. The cartilage inside your joints has no direct blood supply. It survives on synovial fluid, a high-tech biological lubricant that is only produced when the joint is physically loaded and moved. No movement means no fluid. No fluid means dry, brittle cartilage and the early onset arthritis the industry loves to manage with expensive surgeries. It isn't age that's killing your joints. It's disuse and biological stagnation. In almost every dance tradition from Latin America to West Africa, there is a fundamental soft bounce in the knees. The legs never lock. This is superior joint engineering. When you walk or stand with rigid, locked knees, the way most of us were taught, every single step hammers an impact force directly into your cartilage. Do that thousands of times a day, and you are literally grinding your bones away. But when you maintain that slight rhythmic bend seen in dance, that force is diverted into the powerful muscles of your thighs and calves. The cartilage is spared. That bounce isn't for show. It is a joint preservation tactic that the establishment never bothers to teach. And then there's the shoulder. It is the most mobile joint in your entire body, designed for a full 360 degrees of rotation. But the corporate lifestyle has turned it into a cage. When you spend 8 hours a day locked at a desk, your shoulder capsule literally begins to shrink and thicken. The industry calls the end result adhesive capsulitis, or frozen shoulder. It's a painful, debilitating condition that they'll try to fix with months of profitable physical therapy. The actual prevention? Systematic, rhythmic movement through the full range of motion. Those isolated shoulder shimmies and rolls found in traditional dance are essentially a clinical-grade insurance policy against a frozen shoulder. Now, let's look at the hips and the pelvis. the area where the most profitable chronic pain resides. The iliopsoas muscle is the bridge between your lower back and your legs. In every adult who sits for a living, this muscle is chronically shortened and in a state of constant spasm. This spasm yanks your lower spine forward and down, creating a relentless, low-grade compression that no amount of back surgery can truly fix. I had a patient named James, an accountant, 57 years old. He'd been suffering from back pain for 6 years. He'd seen every specialist in the book. I asked him one thing. When was the last time you actually rotated your hips? He looked at me like I was insane. But hip spasm doesn't stop at the back. It infects the pelvic floor. When this entire complex is frozen, it leads to bladder urgency, constipation, and chronic pelvic pain that is often misdiagnosed as an infection like prostatitis. It's not an infection. It's myofascial tension, a mechanical blockage. Rhythmic hip rotation clears that blockage without a single prescription or injection. When you start this protocol, you'll notice one side of your hip moves better than the other. The industry calls this getting older. I call it a clinical red flag. That asymmetry is the ghost of every old injury and every hour spent leaning to one side. That tight side is exactly where the restriction lives, and it is the key to your rehabilitation. You don't push into pain. You move consistently and persistently into that blockage until the biology yields. This is how you reclaim your structure from the inside out. Let's talk about your heart. The industry wants you to believe you need an expensive gym membership and a high-impact treadmill to maintain cardiovascular health. That is a lie designed to keep you paying. A study from Northeastern University proved that free-form dance, moving your body expressively to music without a choreographer, meets every single guideline for heart health. Your heart is a muscle. It doesn't care if you're on an elliptical or in your living room. It responds to metabolic demand. The reason dancing is superior isn't just the movement, it's the compliance. People actually want to do it. The corporate fitness world hates that because you can't sell a subscription to someone who is having fun for free in their own house. Then there is bone density, a massive concern for anyone over 60. The establishment loves to push pills for osteoporosis, but the biology of bone is simple. It responds to rhythmic mechanical loading. When you dance, you are bearing weight in varied directions and tempos. This stimulates your osteoblasts, the cells that literally construct bone tissue. Research proves that consistent dance can slow bone density loss by 20 to 30%. For a woman in menopause or a man over 60, that isn't just a number. It is the difference between a fall you walk away from and a fracture that ends your independence. Let's look at the internal brace of the body, the back extensors. In a gym, training these muscles is boring and often leads to injury. In dance, you are constantly arching and opening the chest, strengthening the deep muscles alongside your spine naturally. And don't forget your thighs. Your quadriceps and hamstrings aren't just for walking. They are the primary venous pump for your lower body. Your quadriceps and hamstrings aren't just for walking. They are the primary venous pump for your lower body. They squeeze your veins to push blood back up to your heart against gravity. Weak legs mean poor circulation and blood pooling. Strong, dancing legs mean a more efficient cardiovascular system and a lower risk of clots. Now, we need to look at the chemistry, the actual drugs your brain produces for free. When you move to rhythm, your brain triggers a simultaneous release of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. This is the exact neurochemical cocktail that antidepressants are designed to mimic. The difference? Antidepressants come with side effects, tolerance issues, and withdrawal syndromes. Dancing produces the same state naturally, with zero discontinuation syndrome. The evidence is so undeniable that York University found patients with Parkinson's disease, a condition where motor neurons literally die off, showed measurable improvement in memory and focus when they danced. Why? Because dancing builds neural reserve. It creates a buffer. Even as the brain takes hits from age or disease, it continues to function because it has more connections to lose before the system fails. So here is the truth the system is hiding. After age 45, your brain's ability to rewire itself starts to drop off. By 60, the decline accelerates. But you can alter that trajectory. New motor patterns at 50 or 60 aren't just exercise. They are a direct strike against cognitive aging. I'm asking you seriously, how old are you? Put it in the comments. The advice I give someone at 38 versus 68 regarding intensity and safety is clinically different, and I need that data to help you bypass the system. Here is your daily protocol. 10 minutes a day. No studios, no partners, no fees. Just you and the music in your living room. Novelty is the medicine. Try a move you've never done before every single time. Once it's automatic, the brain benefit drops. Keep it weird. Smoothness over speed. Slow, controlled motion activates the deep stabilizers that the gym misses. If it's slow, there's no momentum, only muscle. Work the tight side. If your left hip is locked, that's your target. That's where the bottleneck is. Let go. Stop micromanaging your muscles. Free movement fires stabilizers that don't even turn on during your daily commute. The most powerful medicine on earth doesn't require a prescription. 5 minutes of dance beats a bottle of anti-inflammatories for your spine. I've spent 15 years watching people pay for outcomes they could have prevented for free. The system is rigged to treat the illness, not build the health. They profit when you fill a script, not when you learn to move. Share this with someone the system is trying to keep sick. Subscribe to the channel. We're building a community of 200,000 people who are done with the managed decline. I'm Dr. Elias Thorne. I'll keep leaking the truth as long as you keep using it. Get moving.